welcome everyone to Inquisitive Week. Today we have this Miss Aida. She's currently working as content marketer at Creative Fabrica, and she has worked across various roles and brands in her professional history. And she successfully executed uh, a content strategy during COVID for Craft at Home. So, a very warm welcome to you, Aida, to
Thanks
our
so
interview.
much.
How did you get started with your career, and what are some of the uh, challenges that you faced within your career, and how has your professional journey been so far?
So my career in marketing started in a different way than many people already started. So at the beginning for me, I studied a bachelor's degree in journalism, and it wasn't until my master's degree when I switched to the dark side, as they say, studying a master from public relations. And after that, I've always been working in the field of marketing, either on an agency or in a startup, like in the internal department, but always focusing on marketing and with a growth of it. And so far, here we are.
That's great. That's great. Moving on to the next question. So, what are some of the qualities that you believe are necessary to be successful in the field of marketing?
I believe that a marketer should be someone that prefers listening to speaking. In that sense, like to have a successful career in marketing, you must be a voracious learner that is always ready to get inputs and insights from different areas too. For example, like my favorite field of marketing is content marketing, for sure, but that doesn't mean that I don't have to develop analytic skills, coding, and more disciplines that you can integrate as part of your skills. Especially in the moment that we are nowadays, acquiring digital competences and getting skills that you can really apply hands-on, I think it's crucial for anyone that wants to focus on marketing. Having a master's degree is important because it shows that you can think to some point and that you can develop your competencies on a high level. But at the end of the day, it's super important to get hands-on education, to learn to code, to learn how to use graphic design programs such as Photoshop or InDesign. I think that it's very important that as far as it's possible, you can complete a process, a marketing process, to the fullest of yourself. To be independent, to be what they call T-shape, like it's like your skills have the shape of a T. There's always gonna be something that occupies more space. There's always gonna be something that you really like, and that's what moves you. But you have to integrate the rest of the skill sets. Otherwise, nowadays it's gonna be super complicated.
Yes, I do completely agree with you on that point. Like as you've mentioned, it's important to be, a bit of an all-rounder, and to be able to work on the graphic side, to be work on the technology side. So that's, I think, even more important when you're just starting out with your career. So how do you manage that? When you're just starting out with your career, and it could be a little overwhelming to be able to handle everything. So any tips for that?
To me, what's essential is to integrate learning activities on your daily routine. We work 9 to 5, and that's fine. But of course, after your working day ends, you also have to focus on getting new skills that you can use not only for your work life, but also for things that move you outside. Perhaps for some people, it's like joining a paddle course so they feel in better shape and they can face the challenges on their work better. For other people, maybe someone is lacking, skills on the use of Google Tag Manager and they decide to start a course. To me, it's been really helpful when it comes to digital courses and e-learning. For example, right now, I'm studying a specialization through Coursera on writing and editing. It's a course from the University of Michigan, and thanks to quarantine, now it's open for everyone. And I think that it's very important to take these chances and to integrate it as something relevant in your routine. Not just something like, okay, so I've done a course eventually and that's it, but actually something that is part of your day. It's interesting to join the format of a course because sure, there's like a lot of information out there on YouTube or in blogs or whatever, and that's a good complement to start seeing where do you want to dig deeper. But at the end of the day, it's very important to get a structure and to get someone that knows more than you to curate a new product and get a structured education from it.
Yeah, definitely, Aida. So now that would take us to the next question then. So you mentioned now technology is very important in the field of marketing. So how do you see the AI and emerging technologies? How are they changing marketing, and how important it is for a marketing to be able to work with these technologies now?
Well, I think that it's crucial nowadays. Like, of course, not every marketeer is gonna become an expert on AI, and maybe not every marketeer can program or train an algorithm themselves. But I think that it's very important to understand basic tools and how can they help us improve our marketing needs. So in that sense, for example, I had the chance to study traineeship in growth marketing that also included a very good approach to AI and learning from professors like PhD Bernardo Nunes or PhD Juan Venegas. I think that most important part is to learn how it works, see how it can do for you, and if you cannot program an algorithm yourself, that's fine. Not everybody can. Like only people that have a deep science education are able to work with it to that extent. But nowadays there are like a lot of AI-based apps that you can integrate on your marketing routine and that can really help you. Even, for example, normal tools that we use like Spotify already integrate AI to predict what we will want or what kind of music discoveries do we want to reach every week. So at the end of the day, of course, there are like the professionals that create the algorithm and train it properly. But I believe that a good marketeer should know how to interact with it, not create it, but interact with it.
So, Aida, could you please let us know how has COVID changed the landscape for social media marketing?
So actually, that's a great question. The thing is that, like in the first weeks, I think it became quite polarized and everybody was, like making these emergency communication strategies. I faced that myself at Creative Fabrica. We created like an extraordinary line of content that was more focused on giving creative resources to the people that had to quarantine with kids at home. And of course, it's interesting to see how they, how people adapted to the immediate moment. But at the end of the day, COVID-19 has become part of our reality. And unfortunately, it looks like it's come to stay. So I think that the best part is not to treat it as something extraordinary anymore. Maybe in March 2020, it was something extraordinary and we were all imposing these extraordinary strategies to adapt to the circumstance. But right now, I think that adapting means treating it with normality. So, for example, nowadays, even though some areas of the world are still quarantined or there are citizen restrictions, etc., I don't think that it would make sense to create extraordinary content because it's integrating in our routine. We can, for example, remind people of the importance of wearing a mask. We can, like appeal to common sense and say, hey, please, guys, stay at home. It's not the year to celebrate Halloween. And I think that there's a huge responsibility on committing to common sense. But I believe that after the initial breakdown, let's put it like that, it doesn't make much more sense to still treat it as something extraordinary. I also believe that people are quite bored of hearing about COVID. So it's very difficult to generate appealing content on this topic, because at the beginning, for example, Medium, the text platform, was releasing a very interesting content, like explaining people how does this work, like what's exactly a coronavirus, etc. For example, the Next Web, they launched a newsletter on COVID and it was super insightful. And I think that these initiatives are valuable. But what gets outside from sharing scientific knowledge, it's too overcrowded right now. And content marketing, if anything, it has to be interesting for people. So I don't think that up to this point, anything that goes away from what's purely science can be interesting or insightful for people anymore.
Okay, so Okay, so basically, as we have seen, due to this COVID-19, marketing has like shifted to online medium only, and now offline is not there. Neither we are able to market anything in real life apart from this online mode. So, what impact does it have on the business and the like marketing teams?
I think that if anything, it kind of has made things easier. And of course, like I don't want to search for perks of this situation because it doesn't have any perks. It's been a huge disgrace. But I think that, marketing was quite stuck, I think, in practices that were more like from the beginnings of the current century. And if you wanted to integrate tools or you wanted to use, like screen recordings or predictive algorithms or whatever, sometimes like it looked like you were the weirdo that wanted to come like with this thing, even though marketing is a discipline that comes from the Industrial Revolution, and therefore there's a lot that people have been doing for a long time. So in that sense, I think that it has put into power, for example, how valuable is to start projects with a virtual team, that people don't have to be all together in order to get good ideas. Some creative positions like graphic designers or copywriters or editors might be more comfortable, for example, like at their own houses and developing their content on their own pace. And I think that in that sense, it has made us become more rational, and it has helped us integrate some things that were already very powerful, but we were not making the most out of them because we were not focusing, because what we had until now was working. But once that was not working anymore, it was the chance to start trying things that have proven that they work.
Sure, sure. And even in this COVID situation, I think all the firms face a difficult question. No, although their revenues have declined, but they still need to market and still need to, stay in the awareness of their customers. So how does a firm, how are the companies managing that? They have to spend on marketing in spite of their revenues declining.
Well, I think that at the end of the day, I don't like to think about marketing and revenue as separate areas, because I think that revenue is still like the last, but it's still a part of the marketing funnel. At the end of the day, it all starts with awareness, and then you start making conversions. You might acquire people, but from those who you acquire, maybe you only activate a 30%. Only half of that 30% are recurrent users. Maybe some of them will refer you to other people. Some of them might not because they're not satisfied. And at the end of the day, revenue comes at the end of the funnel. So I think that the only way to keep optimizing and scaling your revenue strategy is to keep paying attention, perhaps even more attention, to the rest of the stages of the process. You cannot get revenue without focusing on awareness. You cannot get revenue without acquiring customers. If you don't activate them, you won't get revenue. So if anything, you have to optimize your user experience as much as you can and helping your product grow from every stage of that funnel. Otherwise, revenue won't come itself alone. Like, you can have a great monetizing strategy, but if you don't go to the basic, like if people are not aware that your product can solve their problem or that their service can be what we like to call a vitamin that makes their life better somehow, they won't go back to you. So it's all about optimizing every stage of the process as much as you can. And then hopefully, like, this revenue strategy will also scale.
So Aida, what are some of the latest projects that you're working on at Creative?
So for the last semester, I've been working on an SEO-driven content strategy, which is divided by the main keywords related to the verticals of product. And I think that it's a good summary of the perspective of online marketing for the next year. I think that SEO is going to be more important than ever. And once again, to keep learning is essential to scale those strategies, because SEO changes a lot. And then once again, paying attention to aspects like graphic design, copywriting. People want to see quality content, and they want to see something that is user-centric. They won't go to you because they want to hear that your product is amazing. because they get a lot of inputs during a day and they just want to find out what's useful for them, what they want to learn. So I really believe that a good keyword strategy that drives you to generate an inbound content strategy and to create things that people want to read, as it's been my case up until now, I think that that's crucial. For the next year, honestly, like I would like to experiment with different formats. Like I'd like to, for example, experiment with podcasts. That's something that has caught my attention during this year. And thanks to my journalism background, I think that, like I would like to get into a project like that. I think that that's something exciting that I'd like to tackle because, when I was back in my bachelor's, we were studying radio and we were still making radio novels, and that doesn't seem like a thing anymore. But ever since then, like the podcast has been a boom, and I really think that there's a lot out there for what we can hear and for what does not require an active effort, sorry. Because, like at the end of the day, for example, looking at a video on YouTube, that takes your whole attention. Like watching a video is an active task. While, for example, you can be listening to a podcast while you're running outside, while you're cleaning your house, or doing some repetitive task that is part of your routine and that you can integrate some more stimulus and keep building up. So I really believe that there's a lot of room for projects that help me and other fellow marketeers create content that can be interesting for people.
What suggestions do you want to give to the students who wants to pursue marketing as a career?
So, like, what advice? So I think that the most important one is always be learning. That's crucial. Like a marketeer, as I said at the beginning, has to be a listener and not per se a speaker. People sometimes think that selling is all about going there and speaking and selling something out. I completely disagree. I believe that the most important part is to assume that there's always something left to learn, that the customer is in the center and that's where it must be, that you have to listen and to interact. Because right now we're not facing people that are just consumers. They're what it's called prosumers. They consume our products and they consume our content, but they also produce. And if you want to be in charge of a full marketing mix, you have to take this into account. So to me, to summarize, I think that the best two pieces of advice that I could give a marketeer would be, basically learn and listen. And that's it.
Thank you, Aida. It was truly enriching talking to you, having this conversation with one of the industry pioneers. And I'm pretty sure that our viewers learned a lot from this particular conversation. And we hope to meet you someday in person.
Thank you so much everyone for watching this video. Stay tuned with Inquisitive Bee for many more conversations and interesting discussions with industry pioneers.